You ever have one of those neighbors who acts like the neighborhood is their personal kingdom? Yeah, that was Margot Ellery, president of our Homeowners Association, queen of fines, self-appointed guardian of property values. You couldn't leave your trash can out for an extra hour without getting a letter from her printed in bold Times New Roman. I used to just roll my eyes and keep my head down. But then I started noticing something that didn't add up. Our HOA dues kept going up, yet the park down the street looked worse every month. Dead grass, broken swings, lights that hadn't worked since spring. And then came another maintenance fee adjustment letter. No explanation, just a number. Now, I'm not a guy who likes drama. I'm a mechanic. I fix engines, not politics. But something about it bothered me. So one night, I pulled up the HOA's financial reports online. They looked official enough, except half the vendor names didn't even exist in the state registry. That's when Margot showed up at my driveway. "You need to stop digging," she said, standing there in her massive sun hat, like she was delivering a royal decree. "In fact, you're joining the board. We've had 3 resignations, and it's your civic duty." I laughed. You didn't care about civic duty until I started asking where the landscaping budget went. Her smile tightened, but she didn't back down. "You'll get the paperwork tomorrow," she snapped, before marching off to her golf cart parked illegally across my lawn. I signed the papers just to see what she was hiding. At my first meeting, Margot sat at the head of the table with her 2 loyal sidekicks, Jerry, a nervous accountant who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, and Denise, who spent the entire meeting scrolling through her phone. I waited until Margot started talking about tennis court repairs and trash fines before cutting in. "Before we vote," I said, "I'd like to see the last 3 months of vendor payments." Her face froze mid-sentence. "That's not on the agenda," she said. "Maybe not," I replied. "But I sent my request 5 days ago, and by law, board members have the right to review those records." Jerry practically jumped up to grab a binder from a locked cabinet. When he handed it over, I flipped it open and immediately saw what I needed. Fake companies with P.O. boxes, invoices marked delivered for equipment no one had ever seen. One vendor supposedly replaced all the benches in the park last month for $4,000. "Anyone seen those benches?" I asked. Silence. "They're on backorder," Margot said finally. "Then why does this invoice say delivery confirmed?" Still silence. Denise looked up for the first time all night, eyes darting between us. I didn't push it further then, but I knew. This wasn't just negligence, it was theft. That night, I drove to the address on the invoices. It wasn't a warehouse, it was a UPS store. Mailbox number 42. I took a picture, went home, and made a few calls to friends at the county office. Within a week, I had everything. Tax records, shell companies, even one registered under the name of Margot's son. $32,000 gone in 6 months. I sent the whole file to the county fraud division, copying a detective I knew from my side job doing event security, Detective Rayner. 3 days later, a black SUV pulled into our neighborhood. You could feel the air change. Rayner stepped out, badge glinting in the sun, and knocked on Margot's door. I happened to be outside, trimming my hedges. "Of course. Mrs. Ellery," he said, "we need to ask a few questions about your vendors." For the first time, she didn't have anything to say. By that evening, everyone knew. The neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Screenshots of her son's company, photos of the detective car, wild theories flying everywhere. At the next board meeting, the clubhouse was packed, standing room only. Margot tried to act calm, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. But then old Mrs. Cutter, who'd never said more than 3 words in public, stood up shaking with anger. "You paid your own son's company with our money," she shouted. The room went dead quiet. "That's a private matter," Margot said weakly. I stood up. "No, it's not. It's a violation of the bylaws. You broke the rules, and you knew it." Just then, Rayner walked in, handed her a folded document, and said, "You're being investigated for fraud and falsifying records." Margot's face went pale. No one defended her. Not even Jerry. After she left, no one cheered. People just sat there, stunned, relieved. It was like the air finally cleared after years of holding our breath. Within a week, Margot resigned for medical reasons, and we held our first ever open election. Real neighbors ran this time. A retired teacher, a young mom, an engineer who'd been quietly fixing the clubhouse lights for years. They won by a landslide. The first thing they did was approve the reforms I drafted, mandatory audits, spending transparency, and a ban on doing business with family members. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a moment. But the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, Rainer showed up at my house with a file. "Thought you should see this," he said. Inside were maps and forms showing a new community wellness center Project Margot had filed under a fake name. She'd used the HOA's tax ID and forged signatures to get county approval. It was going to funnel another $100,000 in grant money straight into her pockets. That's when I realized this wasn't some petty scam. She'd been building an empire under our noses. The next month, federal agents showed up with a warrant. They hauled out boxes, computers, even her router. News vans camped outside her house for 2 days straight. It was surreal watching the person who used to threaten people over mailbox paint now facing real prison time. After that, the neighborhood changed. People smiled again. The park got fixed for real this time. New benches, new grass, even a sign that said, "Maintained by the residents who care." I'd walk past and see kids playing, parents talking, and it felt like we'd earned that peace. I never wanted to be a hero, but I learned something. Sometimes fixing a broken system isn't that different from fixing a car. You just have to find where the connection's corroded and start cleaning. A year later, I got another visit from Rainer. The case went federal, he said. Wire fraud, racketeering, the works. She's facing a decade. I didn't feel happy, just steady. Justice wasn't about revenge, it was about balance. That weekend, the new board threw a picnic at the park. Someone brought a cake that said "New Beginnings." Someone else brought a cooler of sodas. We sat under the trees, watching kids run, laughing without fear of fines or letters. Before I left, the teacher, now our HOA president, came over and said, "You ever think about running for office?" I chuckled. "No, ma'am. I fix engines, not people." She smiled. "Well, maybe that's exactly why you should." I didn't answer right away. I just looked around, at the park, the lights, the neighbors who'd stopped being strangers, and thought, maybe fixing things starts small, one neighborhood at a time. So tell me, if you saw something like that happening where you live, would you speak up? Or would you keep your head down and hope someone else does it first? Let me know what you think in the comments, because maybe the next story like this could be yours.